What happens when a beloved late-night legend sits down for what should be a simple interview and faces the most disrespectful host in morning television history? It only took 33 seconds for Savannah Guthrie to destroy her own reputation with one comment that crossed every line imaginable. The Today Show set looked normal that morning. The lights were bright, the cameras were rolling, and Conan O'Brien walked onto that stage with his signature smile, ready to talk about his latest comedy tour. He waved to the audience. He shook hands with the panel. Everything seemed fine. Savannah Guthrie sat in the center. Hoda Kotb was to her left. Al Roker sat on the end. Craig Melvin filled out the panel. They all smiled. They all looked ready for a fun conversation with one of comedy's biggest names. But from the very first question, something felt off. "So Conan," Savannah started, and there was already an edge to her voice. "You're here promoting another tour. Another attempt to stay relevant, I suppose?" The audience went quiet. Even the other hosts looked uncomfortable. Conan's smile flickered for just a second, but he recovered quickly. You could see him processing what he'd just heard. Was she joking? Was this part of some bit he didn't know about? He glanced at the other hosts, looking for some sign that this was planned, but their faces told him everything. This was not planned. "Well, I like to think I'm doing more than attempting," Conan said with a light laugh, still trying to keep things light. "The shows have been selling out pretty consistently. The audiences have been incredible. Really energetic crowds." "Selling out?" Savannah repeated, and she made air quotes with her fingers. The gesture was condescending, dismissive. "That's interesting, because I was looking at some of the venues, and they're not exactly Madison Square Garden, are they? I mean, we're talking about theaters that hold what, 1,000 people? 2,000 on a good night?" She paused, letting that hang in the air. The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the fun morning show banter they'd expected. "Some are bigger, some are smaller," Conan said, his voice still even. "But size isn't everything. It's about the connection with the audience. It's about the quality of the show." Hoda shifted in her seat. You could see her glancing at Savannah with concern. Al Roker cleared his throat like he wanted to jump in, but Savannah kept going. "I mean, well, let's be honest here," Savannah continued. "Your late night show ended. Your other show got canceled. Now you're doing a podcast and playing smaller venues. That's quite a fall from the top, isn't it?" The studio audience was dead silent now. Conan sat up a bit straighter in his chair. His smile was gone. "I wouldn't call it a fall," Conan said, and his voice was calm but firm. You could hear the shift in his tone. The playfulness was gone now. "I'd call it evolution. The industry changed. I changed with it. I'm actually really proud of the work I'm doing now. The podcast gives me creative freedom I never had in network television. The live shows let me connect with audiences in a more intimate way." "Proud," Savannah said, and she actually laughed. Not a friendly laugh, a mocking one. "That's one way to spin it, I guess. Another way would be to admit that you couldn't compete anymore. The younger hosts took your spot. The ratings proved that audiences moved on. Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, they're the ones dominating late night now. Where does that leave you?" The question hung in the air like poison. Hoda actually flinched. You could see her whole body tense up. Craig Melvin finally spoke up. "Savannah, I think we should focus on the tour itself, the comedy, the creative process. Conan, tell us about the cities you're visiting. What can audiences expect from the show?" But Savannah cut him off immediately. She actually held up her hand to silence him. "No, I think this is important. We have Conan O'Brien sitting here, a man who used to host one of the biggest shows on television, and I think our viewers deserve honesty. Not some polished PR spin about evolution and creative freedom. Let's talk about what really happened." Conan looked directly at her now. His eyes were intense. "I've been nothing but honest. I've talked openly about my career transitions in hundreds of interviews. I've discussed the Tonight Show situation. I've talked about leaving TBS. I've been transparent about everything. I don't know what you think you're exposing here. What I'm exposing, Savannah said, leaning forward in her chair, her elbows on her knees like she was interrogating him, is that maybe the comedy world passed you by. Your style of humor, the tall guy with the silly string dance moves and the self-deprecating jokes and the weird bits with puppets. It's very 2005. We're in a different era now. Comedy has evolved. The audience wants something different. They want political commentary. They want social awareness. They want hosts who understand the modern world. The words landed like slaps, each one designed to sting, designed to diminish. Hoda actually gasped, out loud, on camera. "Savannah, come on," she said softly. But Savannah wasn't stopping. She was on a roll now, and nothing was going to derail her. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. What the industry whispers about at parties and events. Look at the late-night landscape now. Look at who's succeeding. Look at who's winning Emmys and trending on social media. They're doing political commentary. They're doing viral bits that people share on TikTok and Twitter. They're speaking to what matters right now. What are you doing? Playing theaters and talking to podcast listeners who are stuck in the past? Who can't let go of the glory days?" She sat back, looking satisfied with herself, like she'd just delivered a devastating closing argument. Conan took a deep breath. You could see him trying to maintain composure. His hands gripped the arms of his chair. His jaw tightened. But when he spoke, his voice was measured, controlled. "First of all," he said slowly, deliberately, "there's nothing wrong with theaters. Some of the best comedy happens in theaters. Intimate venues where you can actually see the audience's faces, where you can have real moments. Second, my podcast is actually very successful. Millions of downloads. Great guests. Creative freedom to have real conversations without time constraints or commercial breaks. Third, and this is important, I don't measure success by your standards. I don't measure it by network time slots or Nielsen ratings or Twitter trends. I measure it by whether I'm proud of the work, whether I'm happy, whether I'm making people laugh, and by those standards, I'm doing great." "My standards?" Savannah's voice got louder. Her face was flushing now. "I'm talking about objective facts. Network television, prime time, ratings that matter, cultural impact that extends beyond a niche audience. You used to have all of that. You used to be a household name. Now you're, what, a podcast host? You're someone who used to be famous. That's the reality, Conan, and I think pretending otherwise is dishonest to our viewers." The other hosts were exchanging looks now. Panicked looks. This had gone so far off the rails that nobody knew how to fix it. Where Al Roker finally jumped in. "Okay, I think we need to take a different direction here. Conan, I've always loved your travel specials. Are you planning more of those?" "Al, please," Savannah said, holding up her hand. "I'm having a conversation here." "It doesn't feel like a conversation," Conan said quietly. "It feels like an attack." "An attack?" Savannah leaned back and crossed her arms. "I'm asking legitimate questions. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing publicity tours." "Tough questions?" Conan's voice rose slightly. "Tough questions would be about my creative process, about the challenges of modern comedy, about the industry changes I've witnessed. What you're doing is just being cruel for no reason." The other panel members were frozen. Hoda looked like she wanted to crawl under the desk. Jack Craig was staring at his notes. Al was looking off camera, probably at the producers. "Cruel," Savannah repeated. "That's rich coming from someone who made a career out of mocking people." "I made a career out of comedy," Conan corrected her. "There's a difference between jokes in a comedy context and personal attacks during what's supposed to be a promotional interview." "Oh, so you can dish it out, but you can't take it?" Savannah's voice dripped with condescension. "That's very interesting. Very telling." Conan stood up then. Not dramatically, not with a big gesture, not with anger. He just calmly stood up, his movements deliberate and controlled, and started removing his microphone. His hands were steady. His expression was calm, but there was a finality to it. A decision had been made. "What are you doing?" Savannah asked. Her voice had a note of uncertainty now, like she couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. "I'm leaving," Conan said simply, setting the microphone pack on the chair where he'd been sitting. "This isn't an interview. This is you trying to humiliate me on live television, and I don't know why, but I don't have to participate in it. I don't have to sit here and let you insult my career, my choices, my work, and my life." "You're walking out?" Savannah looked shocked, genuinely shocked, like she couldn't believe he'd actually do it. Like she thought he'd just sit there and take whatever she dished out. "We're in the middle of a segment. We have cameras rolling. This is live television." "No," Conan said, his voice firm now, leaving no room for argument. "You're in the middle of an ambush. I'm in the middle of maintaining my self-respect. There's a difference, a huge difference, and I'm choosing myself over your show." Hoda stood up too. "Conan, please, I'm so sorry. This isn't how we normally do things here." "I know it's not, Hoda," Conan said gently, his voice softening for her. "I've been on this show before, multiple times. It's always been professional. It's always been fun. This is all her." He pointed at Savannah, a single finger extended, not aggressive but clear, unmistakable. "This is her choice, her behavior, her decision to turn this into something ugly." Savannah, who was now standing as well, her face red, her posture defensive. "How dare you?" Savannah said, her voice rising to match the red in her cheeks. "I am the host of this show. I set the tone. I ask the questions. You don't get to walk out on me. You don't get to just leave when things get difficult." "Actually," Conan said, turning to face her fully now, "I do. That's exactly what I get to do. You don't own me. NBC doesn't own me anymore. Those days are long gone. I'm a guest who was invited here, presumably to have a pleasant conversation about my work, and I'm choosing to leave because you've made it clear you have no interest in a respectful conversation. You're interested in scoring points, in making yourself look tough. In what? Proving something? I honestly don't know what your goal is here." Craig stood up and tried to be the peacemaker. "Everyone, let's just take a breath. We can reset, start over, talk about the tour, the comedy, the positive stuff." "There's no resetting this," Conan said. "She started this interview by questioning my relevance. She called my venues small. She said my comedy style is outdated. She mocked my podcast. She suggested I'm living in the past. And she did all of this with a smile on her face, like she was doing me a favor by having me here." "I was asking hard questions," Savannah insisted. "That's journalism." "No," Conan said firmly. "Journalism is seeking truth and informing the public. What you did was try to tear someone down on national television because, what? It makes you feel powerful? It makes you feel important? I honestly don't know what you were trying to accomplish." The studio was so quiet you could hear the cameras moving. The audience didn't make a sound. Every single person on that panel looked uncomfortable except Savannah, who just looked angry. "You're being incredibly unprofessional," Savannah said. Conan actually laughed at that. A short, sharp laugh. "I'm being unprofessional? You spent the last several minutes insulting me, my career, my choices, and my work. You dismissed decades of comedy as irrelevant. You suggested that success can only be measured by network television ratings. And you did all of this to someone who came here as a guest, who showed up on time, who was ready to have a fun conversation about making people laugh." Al Roker spoke up again. "Conan, man, I've known you for years. You know this isn't what the Today Show is about." "I know, Al," Conan said. "That's why this is so shocking. I expected a friendly chat, some laughs, maybe a funny story or two. Instead, I got whatever this was. Savannah took a step toward him. You're making a huge mistake. Walking out of this interview will be everywhere. Social media is going to destroy you for this. Let them, Conan said. I'd rather be destroyed for standing up for myself than sit here and let you continue this bizarre attack. And you know what? I think the people watching at home are smart enough to see what happened here. They saw you start this. They saw you push and push and push. They saw your colleagues trying to stop you. They'll make up their own minds about who was in the wrong. Hoda had tears in her eyes now. Conan, I'm so sorry. Please know this doesn't represent all of us. I know, Hoda, Conan said softly. You're great. Al's great. Craig's great. This isn't about you guys. He looked at Savannah one more time. I hope whatever you were trying to prove was worth it. I came here to promote a comedy tour, to make people laugh, to have fun. You turned it into something ugly, and I honestly feel bad for you that this is what you thought needed to happen today. Don't feel bad for me, Savannah snapped. Feel bad for yourself. Your career is over. The entire panel reacted to that. Hoda put her hand over her mouth. Craig shook his head. Al looked away. Even the crew members behind the cameras looked shocked. And there it is, Conan said quietly. That's what this was really about. You wanted to tell me my career is over. You wanted to make yourself feel superior by trying to diminish everything I've accomplished. Well, congratulations. You said it. And now everyone watching knows exactly who you are. He started walking toward the edge of the stage. Savannah called after him. You can't just leave. When we have 4 more minutes in this segment. Conan stopped and turned around. Fill it with an apology. That should take about 4 minutes if you're sincere. Craig tried one more time. Conan, please, let's talk this through. There's nothing to talk through, Craig, Conan said. She made her intentions clear from the first question. This was never going to be a normal interview. She had an agenda, and I'm not going to sit there and be part of it. Savannah's voice got even louder. You're acting like a child. This is how interviews work. Hosts ask tough questions. Tough questions are fine, Conan said, raising his voice to match hers. Disrespect is not. There's a difference, and the fact that you can't see that difference is exactly why I'm leaving. Hoda tried to grab Savannah's arm, probably to get her to stop talking, but Savannah pulled away. Your ego can't handle criticism, Savannah said. That's what this is really about. My ego? Conan looked genuinely baffled. I've spent 30 years in comedy. I've been criticized by professionals, by audiences, by critics who actually know what they're talking about. I can handle criticism just fine. What I can't handle is sitting across from someone who clearly has a personal problem with me and is using her platform to work through whatever that is. I don't have a personal problem with you, Savannah said, but her voice wavered slightly. Then why did you do this? Conan asked simply. Give me one good reason why you thought this approach was appropriate. She didn't answer. She just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. That's what I thought, Conan said. There is no good reason. You just decided to be mean today. Maybe you were having a bad morning. Maybe you're dealing with something in your personal life. Maybe you don't like comedians. I don't know, and honestly, I don't care. What I do know is that I don't deserve this treatment, and I'm not going to accept it. Al stood up and walked over to Conan. Let me walk you out, buddy. Thanks, Al, Conan said. I appreciate that. As they started to leave together, Savannah shouted after them. This is going to ruin you. Everyone's going to see you couldn't handle a real interview. Conan stopped one more time. He turned around slowly. When he spoke, his voice was calm, but carried across the entire studio. Savannah, I've been in this business long enough to know that the truth eventually comes out. The cameras caught everything. One, your colleagues' faces said everything. The audience's silence said everything. And my walking out says everything. People will watch this and make their own judgments. I'm comfortable with that. Are you? She didn't respond. She just stood there, looking smaller somehow, despite being on her own show, on her own set, surrounded by her own team. Hoda walked over to Conan. "Can I hug you?" she asked quietly. "Of course," Conan said, and they embraced. "I'm so sorry," Hoda whispered. "This is mortifying." "Not your fault," Conan whispered back. "You're always wonderful." Craig came over too. "Man, I don't know what happened here, but you handled it with class." "Thanks, Craig," Conan said. "I appreciate you trying to redirect things." The three of them walked Conan to the edge of the stage while Savannah stood alone in the center, watching them go. You could hear her breathing heavily into her microphone. You could see her hands shaking slightly. A producer's voice came through someone's earpiece, loud enough to be picked up on the microphones. "We're going to commercial. Now." But before they could cut away, Savannah had one final thing to say. "Fine. Leave. I don't need you anyway. This show was doing great before you got here, and it'll be doing great after you're gone." Conan paused at the very edge of the stage. He didn't turn around this time. He just said, very quietly, "I hope you watch this back and think about the kind of person you want to be." Then, he was gone. Al walked with him. The cameras stayed on Savannah, who was now standing alone on the set, her co-hosts having abandoned her to walk Conan out. Her face was flushed. Her eyes were wild. She looked around at the empty chairs, the silent audience, the crew members who were carefully avoiding eye contact with her. "What?" she said to no one in particular. "What did I do wrong? I ask questions. That's my job." Nobody answered her. The stage manager made a cutting motion with his hand. The cameras finally stopped rolling, but the damage was done. The entire confrontation had aired live. Every word, every uncomfortable silence, every shocked face from her fellow hosts, every moment of Conan trying to maintain his dignity while being attacked for no reason. And the final image, before the commercial break, was Savannah standing alone on that set, trying to justify her behavior to an empty room. The walk-off that shook morning television. The interview that became an interrogation. The moment when one of comedy's most beloved figures refused to be disrespected on live television. And the host who learned, in real time, that being mean doesn't make you a better journalist. It just makes you mean. Conan O'Brien walked onto the Today Show set expecting a fun conversation. He left with his dignity intact and his head held high. Savannah Guthrie started the segment as the host in control. She ended it alone, her colleagues having sided with the guest over her, her reputation damaged by her own words, her judgment questioned by millions of viewers who watched the whole thing unfold. The confrontation lasted less than 10 minutes. But in those 10 minutes, everything changed. Conan showed why he's remained relevant for decades. His grace under pressure, his refusal to engage in cruelty, even when provoked. His ability to articulate exactly what was wrong with the situation without losing his composure. These are the qualities that built his career, and they were on full display as he walked away from a host who had forgotten the basic principle of treating guests with respect. Savannah revealed something too. Her need to dominate the conversation. Her willingness to hurt someone to make herself feel important. Her inability to recognize when she'd crossed a line. And most damning of all, her reaction when called out. No apology. No self-reflection. Just defensiveness and anger and more attacks. The other hosts tried to save it. Hoda with her empathy. Al with his attempts to redirect. Craig with his mediation efforts. But once Savannah started down that path, there was no stopping her. She was determined to make Conan feel small. And she couldn't understand why he wouldn't just sit there and take it. The audience will remember this. Not because Conan walked out. People walk out of interviews all the time. They'll remember it because of how it happened. The escalation, the cruelty, the moment when a host forgot that her job is to make guests feel welcome, not to tear them down. They'll remember Conan's calm responses, his attempts to explain what was wrong, his clear boundary setting, his final words to Savannah about thinking about the kind of person she wants to be. These weren't the words of someone throwing a tantrum. These were the words of someone who had been pushed too far and chose to exit with grace rather than engage in a fight. They'll remember the faces of the other hosts, Hoda's shock, Al's discomfort, Craig's confusion. These weren't scripted reactions. These were genuine responses from people who work with Savannah every day and couldn't believe what they were witnessing. And they'll remember Savannah, standing alone on that stage, trying to justify the unjustifiable, insisting she was just doing her job, claiming Conan was too sensitive, shouting after him as he left, every word making it worse, every defense digging the hole deeper. The 10-minute segment that should have been a light, fun conversation about comedy and touring. Instead, it became a masterclass in how not to conduct an interview, how not to treat a guest, how not to use your platform, and how not to respond when someone stands up for themselves. Conan walked away, but in walking away, he won. He showed that you don't have to sit through disrespect. You don't have to smile and nod when someone is trying to humiliate you. You don't have to play along with someone else's attempt to make themselves feel powerful at your expense. You can simply stand up, remove your microphone, and leave. And sometimes, that's the most powerful thing you can do. Savannah stayed. But in staying, she lost. She lost the respect of her colleagues. She lost the benefit of the doubt from her audience. She lost the moral high ground she thought she had. And she lost the interview because the story stopped being about Conan and started being about her behavior. The cameras captured it all. The beginning, when she came out swinging with that first insulting question. The middle, when she doubled down again and again, despite everyone around her trying to stop her. And the end, when she stood alone, angry and defensive, unable to see what everyone else could see clearly, that she had turned a simple promotional interview into a personal attack, and her guest had refused to participate. This is what happens when ego overrides professionalism. When the need to dominate overrides the purpose of the conversation. When a host forgets that making a guest look bad doesn't make the host look good. It just makes everyone uncomfortable and raises questions about why the host felt the need to behave that way in the first place. Conan left the building that day with his integrity intact. Savannah remained in the studio with questions to answer. Questions about her judgment. Questions about her professionalism. Questions about what she was really trying to accomplish. And the thing about questions like that is, they don't go away just because you refuse to answer them. They linger. They follow you. They become part of your story. The interview that wasn't an interview. The conversation that became a confrontation. The promotional appearance that turned into a stand for dignity. And the host who learned, in the harshest way possible, that treating people with respect isn't optional. It's essential. And when you forget that, when you let your worst impulses take over, when you use your platform to be cruel instead of curious, you don't just lose a guest. You lose something far more important. You lose the trust of everyone watching. 10 minutes. That's all it took. 10 minutes for Savannah Guthrie to undo years of carefully built credibility. On 10 minutes for Conan O'Brien to remind everyone why he's lasted so long in a brutal industry. 10 minutes for 3 other hosts to show their character by supporting the guest over their colleague. And 10 minutes for millions of viewers to witness something they'd never forget. The day a comedy legend said, "Enough is enough," and walked away with his head held high, leaving behind a host who still doesn't understand what she did wrong.